Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. So glad you guys can join us either on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and on X. I'm going to go ahead and bring in our friends over on Instagram so they can be a part of our chat for today. They want to connect with our friends over on Amazon as well, and I introduce you guys to today's guest. If you guys are new to us on any of the platforms, so glad you guys could join us for today's episode of our program. And we're now live on Amazon with Cyrus Webb Presents. If you guys are new to us on the Amazon platform, welcome. Make sure you guys do hit that follow button. You see the follow button either here in this corner or you'll see it down below. You also will see the latest book by our next guest. We're excited to welcome Helen Sheehy to our broadcast today. Helen's written this great book I had a chance to read called Just Willa. You guys will see it there either in print or the Kindle edition as well. We want to talk to Helen not only about the writing of the book, but also what it's like for us to take us to a different time that is in many ways still familiar to us today in 2025. If you guys are not staying connected with Helen, we will let you guys know how to do that. But Helen, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Oh, it's great to be here.
Well, the pleasure is definitely all mine. I really enjoyed the book, and I'm excited about the opportunity to be able to speak with you about it. So let's start there, Helen. What has it been like for you to see the way that people are responding to the character Willa and the life that you're able to bring to life for us?
Well, it's early days, but I'm really enthused by the response because
Mhm.
I have to tell you that when I started working on this back in 2004, I
Hmm.
wasn't sure that anybody would really care about an unknown, ordinary woman from the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma. I had written three biographies of sort of famous theater people. So I was skeptical, but I really, really wanted to find out more about this life and my mother's life and this story.
Right.
So I started working on it.
Yeah. I'm so glad you framed it that way because I honestly think, Helen, that's one of the things that makes this book so relatable, as I mentioned in my introduction. Because I think a lot of times we read about these individuals that seem larger than life that really we
Mhm.
have no connection with. Even though, of course, Willa's life began before mine, the
Mhm.
situation she find herself in and trying to be a provider, trying to
Mhm.
be able to do the best she can in the world, that is not always kind, I think are things that people can definitely relate to
Mhm.
today. Did you know that going in, or was that something that kind of came up as a story came out?
Well, I figured it out when I gave that people would be interested in this, that it was universal because I gave
Yeah.
a talk here in Connecticut to
Mhm.
these New England, a big New England group, and they wanted to hear about my biographies.
Mhm.
And so I talked about those for maybe like 40 minutes, and then they'd asked me to talk about what I was working on now. So I thought, okay, because I'd already started the research, but I wasn't sure. So I told them about Willa and about Jake and about the Dust Bowl and the Depression and about the Okies who stayed and bootlegging and farming. Cyrus, they were fascinated. I was
Yeah.
shocked. There was not one question about any of my famous women. All they wanted to know about was Willa and Jake.
Yeah.
And that gave me courage. I thought, okay, I'm going forward with this because people do care. And I realized that all art is absolutely local, it's specific. And
Yes.
that's what
Yeah.
I wanted to figure out. How did these people live? How did they manage? Why did they do things? So
Yeah.
that's really what I sort of cared about as a writer.
Yeah. And I found for myself, and thank you for sharing that, Helen. What I found too is that, even though it's a time that I'm not personally familiar
Hmm.
with, the situations are so relatable, right? And
Hmm.
it makes you think, wow, if she was able to do what she did with so quote unquote little,
Exactly.
what can I learn from that? How can I navigate the world? But I think the other side of that too, Helen, I talked about doing it with something little. What I also loved about this book, and it kind of reminded me of honestly what my mom used to tell me about her upbringing, and that is how close the family was,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
how close the communities were, and how even though you may not have had a lot, people looked out for each other. What was that like for you to
Oh,
explore?
they did. And they did in my mother's time when she was
Mhm.
growing up during the Depression and the Dust Bowl. But
Yeah.
I grew up in Oklahoma. I grew up on tenant farms. And
Hmm.
one of the things that I think is really different now, so we were poor. We were tenant farmers, but I went to school on these little tiny public schools, these little communities with a lot of rich landowners' kids.
Mm.
But I never felt I never felt that. There was
Yeah.
never that divide. We were all the same. And it was basically what kind of a person you were. Were you a good
Yes.
student? Were you a good athlete? That was important. And were you a hard worker? I'm sure you
Right.
remember that, Cyrus. It
Yes.
was all about, if you're a hard worker. Um,
Mhm.
but now I find that, I don't know, I think things have shifted. But
Yeah.
really, the community, absolutely. Well, when I grew up, we had a party line. So if you had to
Mhm.
use the telephone, you
Me
would pick
too.
it up. Did you really?
Yes.
You don't look that old, Cyrus.
Yeah. We did, Helen. So you're speaking my language now. But I think that and that's the cool thing for our audience to know. Helen and I had never talked before today,
Right.
but you wouldn't know that because his story has kind of created a bridge now for readers.
Right.
So let's go back. We're going to come back to Just Willa, Helen, but you
Okay.
referenced something earlier, and that is this is not your first book. It is your first novel or historical
Right.
novel, but you've written other biographies. When did your love of writing and exploring others' lives, when did that begin for you?
Well, I think I grew up just loving to, well, what I did was act out stories in the pasture. That's
Mhm.
basically what I did. I made up stories. I always loved to read. But it wasn't until I was working at the Hartford Stage Company in the 80s that I really became interested in biography. I studied with a wonderful biographer. But I've always just loved theater and loved telling stories and improvising. And that's always been a part of my life, but mostly growing up on the farm, it was as a reader. Reading, I love science fiction. I loved reading everything. Science
Right.
fiction, mystery stories, all of those things.
Yeah.
Oh,
And now,
sorry. But the reason I loved reading is
Mhm.
because my mother refused to let me drive the tractor. So everybody, I remember throwing the biggest fit ever, but she wouldn't let me do it. My brothers were driving the tractor at 7, 8 years old, but I was not allowed. I was destined to go to college and do different
Uh-huh.
things. So
Yeah.
I read. So I'm grateful to her now, but boy, at the time I was upset.
Gotcha. Yeah. I tell people, Helen, my punishment, I've been an avid reader all my life. And so my punishment, I tell people from my parents, I'd have to go outside and play.
Oh, I'm with you. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
so,
Did you
so
read
that,
under the covers with a flashlight?
oh my goodness, yes. I mean, so that's what I'm saying. I mean, it is one of those things, which is probably why I started wearing glasses so early
Me too.
in my life. But Helen, that in itself, see, you've been able to do something that so many people just think about. How does that feel to know that even before you wrote Just Willa, that you were able to quote unquote live the dream of so many and to see people respond to your work?
It's very, very satisfying. It really is because
Mhm.
what any kind of art, like especially doing theater, it's so fulfilling because you're connecting with an audience, you're connecting with a reader. And what's really interesting about writing is everybody's going to take something different away from it. The response is going to be different because once I finish it, then it doesn't belong to me anymore. That
Right.
reader, in fact, there's a reader in Brooklyn, urban guy from Brooklyn. He read the book and he's never, I mean, I don't think he's ever been on a farm. He loved it, which was
Wow.
so interesting to me, which just
Mhm.
makes, I don't know, that there is something universal that we all share. But I also have to say, Cyrus, that writing about this world now and me just looking back at this book, it seems like a lost world. But I
Yeah.
hope those values aren't gone. I hope that those things are all there
Mhm.
that are really, really important to hang on to, that's meant a lot to me.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, and we're gonna go back to that, Helen, because I think that's a great point. Hello to you, Mr. Ellaby. Good to see you over there on IG. Appreciate you guys on YouTube as well. For those that are just coming in, welcome. You're watching Cyrus Webb Presents. Author Helen Sheehy is with us today. She's making her first time on the program, even though you wouldn't be able to tell it because we're having such a great time having a conversation today. Her new book is called Just Willa. If you guys are joining us on the Amazon side, you can find it there in print. You can be able to get your copy now, or even the Kindle edition now to start reading today. We're
Mhm.
talking to her also about what it's been like for her even before this book to do what she loves. Helen, did you have any apprehension in having such success in writing nonfiction to writing a book like Just Willa?
Not really,
Okay.
because frankly, it was an obsession.
Oh,
Writing for me to write something, and I've written quite a few essays, but my propulsion to write always is about, I need to figure something out. I need to
Mhm.
discover something. And so writing Just Willa was a way for me to really know my mother, somebody I didn't really know her.
Right.
So it was a way, so that it became an obsession. So actually, I didn't need any more than that. It just drove me that I had to figure this out. And it took me 20 years, but here I am. But it took that long to kind of get it right. So I was satisfied. So my questions were answered.
So that I was going to ask you about that. I was going to ask you, did you feel like part of that time was you felt almost an obligation to make sure you got it right?
Oh, absolutely. An
Yeah.
obligation. And well, I was trained as a biographer. And so as a
Yeah.
biographer, you have an obligation to the truth, to getting the facts right, to double checking, all of that thing. But it's weird because even though this is fiction, I almost felt more of an obligation. In fact, somebody said that this book is all fiction and all true. And
Yeah.
it sort of is because
Yeah.
I had to feel that it was true.
Mhm.
And that did take a long time and a lot of thinking,
Mm.
and some research, but a lot of it was imagination, putting myself into that place in that world.
Right. I want to talk about appreciation for a moment because I think this comes up in the book as well. Thinking about the time period that we're looking at,
Mhm.
even the 1960s, depending on where you lived in the country, right? Life
Mhm.
was so different. I think about my mother, being in the 1960s here in Mississippi, versus what Willa was like there. I want to talk about appreciation from the standpoint of you as the author. What it was like for you to reflect on what she was able to do with what she had, but also how today it kind of eliminates some of the excuses, right, of what we can't
Yes.
do. Did you have those thoughts as
Right.
well?
Right. Yes. I mean, when I look back on what she did and what her family did with literally nothing, with homesteading in Oklahoma, and
Right.
you really don't have much except your strong back and a few things and very little money. And the other thing I think I took away from this, and that I actually took away from with my mother, that she
Mm.
gave me, is this sense of resilience,
Yeah.
this grit. And we were taught, I don't know how you were taught, and in fact, I've told my students that you don't whine, you don't feel sorry for yourself. So there is this sense that you just try to persist and work hard and make it through. And
Right.
frankly, I look at some of the things they went through, and I feel like, oh my gosh, I have such an easy life now compared to what they'd had to do.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree, and I think that appreciation is almost what makes history so important. And so that's the last
Mhm.
thing I want to talk to you about, Helen, because I think we're living in interesting times where people don't have the appreciation for history. I loved history in school,
Yes.
and I feel like it helped me to appreciate more where I was at the time I started
Mhm.
learning it, but also where I am today. Even though it is a novel, what do you hope people appreciate about the importance of history and more importantly, about their own stories?
Well, I think that for Willa in her story, what she knew about history, she really followed national politics. And she really followed, for example, President Roosevelt, Franklin Delano
Mhm.
Roosevelt, who literally came into their farm home in the 30s and spoke to them and gave them courage and gave them hope. And she passed that on to me. I remember her talking about Roosevelt and how all of those things are really important and you have to be connected. And another thing that's interesting, when I was growing up, my parents were Democrats. I mean, they were FDR Democrats,
Mhm.
but there were times in Oklahoma when they would vote for Republican.
Mhm.
But now you don't see that. I mean, there's something that's so polarizing, that we seem to have lost.
Yeah.
But that was incredibly important to me, and we had to know about that world and about
Right.
how government programs could help or hurt the farmers, those sorts of things.
Mm. And I think to that point, Helen, I think too, in being able to find common ground, I think that's
Mhm.
another thing because it's not like Willa agreed with everyone around her
No,
and what was
no.
happening. but being able to find that common ground, I
Mhm.
think, is so important, and that's something that is a work for all of us to be able to do. Hello to you, Deja. Good to be able to see you over there on IG. Hello to you, Matthew Thornhill. Good to be able to see you as well. Helen, I really enjoyed this book. I'm so glad now it's out in the world for people to be able to read. Again, Just Willa is the title of the book. Our guest today is author Helen Sheehy. You mentioned your students. I do want to ask you for advice for those out there who may have thought about writing about their own family or writing their own
Mhm.
story. What advice do you normally share, Helen, about the importance of sharing those stories inside of us?
Well, you really just have to do it. There's something that Willa says in the book, get with it.
Hmm.
Just sit down with your parents. I wish I had done that. I really wish I had done that, but everybody was so busy. But
Yeah.
find the time to just, and then you really need to record it in some way. Write
Yeah.
it down, videotape it, tape record it, get them. And there's some, I know on Amazon, they have some little booklets just with some question prompts that you could
Hmm.
ask your parents or your grandparents, and get those stories. And no story is too small. What you're looking for are the specifics. Well, wait a
Right.
minute. Did you have a phone? Why didn't you have a phone? Did you have a party line? What did you eat? Where did you go? I mean, when I was growing up, we went to the store once a month. How
Mm.
often did you shop? Where did you shop? Find out those. I would just start with the small details. Don't go
Yeah.
for the great cosmic questions. Just find
Right.
out those tiny things about
Yeah.
life.
That is such a great point.
Mhm,
And it's so great. I tell people my grandmother helped raise me, Helen. And
mhm.
one of the joys of my life before I lost her at the age of 91
Oh my goodness.
was that I got a chance to interview her a year before she died on the radio. I'm on the radio here in Mississippi as well,
Yeah.
on the radio show. And I'm still able to have
Yes.
that recording and to be able to hear her voice always makes me smile.
Invaluable,
Yeah.
invaluable. You
Yeah.
hear that, "Oh, I wish I had a recording of my mother," and I don't. I could
Yeah.
have, but I didn't, and
Yeah.
I really, really regret that.
Yeah. But to be able to share a bit of her life in this is a real gift for
Mhm.
all of us, Helen. So I really appreciate that. Again, everyone, Just Willa is the new book. You can get it here in print or the Kindle edition here on Amazon. Helen, thank you so much. I feel like I have a new friend now.
I know, it's great. Our glasses, I'm looking at your glasses.
Yeah. Yeah. How
Did you
let our
wear
audience.
contacts? Did you wear contacts?
Well, let me tell you, I wore contacts for a while, but to me they make me look too young, and so
Oh.
I know that sounds crazy,
No, it
but
doesn't, I get
yeah,
it.
but it's like what the glasses make me look at least a little bit older and more studious. So
Intellectual.
yeah, there you go. That's what it is. Helen, let our audience know how can they stay connected with you.
Okay, they can contact me at my website, HelenSheehy.org. Oh, and if they're interested in trying to pass the 8th grade exam that all the kids in Oklahoma took in the 30s and trying to pass it, you won't. You'll flunk it. I flunked it. My 8th grade honor student friends flunked it. It's so difficult.
Wow,
Test it on everything. It's amazing.
wow, that's amazing. Helen, congratulations again, and looking forward to our next chat together.
Thank you, Cyrus. Great to
More than
meet with you.
welcome. Same here. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Until next time, you all make it a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.